looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to scottallenroberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, happy Thursday evening, folks. Welcome to the program. This is Scotty Roberts. You're watching my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. Check out the schedule. See all the times of the day where you can hear this show in its rebroadcast form, or come right here to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And you can join this channel, become a member of this broadcast by clicking the join button down below. And you can see 3 different ways to become a member. And so thanks for being here. I sure appreciate it. It was a hot one today, and it was smoky. I know Leslie Holker, I don't think she's in the chat room tonight, but I saw her earlier today, and she put up a post about how it was so smoky in her area. They live about 50 miles from here, and that's all the smoke from the fires coming down from Canada. And so it was not just a humid day, which you see hanging in the sky, and everything looks saggy and tinted back to a gray, but there was smoke in the sky as well. So I want to say hey to everybody. Hey, Michelle Canham-Free. Good evening to you. Master Finn, join or die, he says. That was actually an old phrase from the American Revolution. Join or die. And so welcome, Master Finn. Thanks for taking the helm. Steve Clark, good to see you, brother. Howdy to you as well. Field Guy, good to see you. And yeah, you're here, Field Guy. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Teresa Dentone, good to see you from all the way out there on the East Coast. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all the posts that you make, all the positivity that you share. And that's a good thing for us all to see. Wesley Curry II, good to see you. I joined a weight loss health gym 9 months ago. I'm going down there someday personally to find out what's going on. There you go. All right. Steph Cuervo Queen. Good to see you. Glad you're in here tonight. And who else we got in here? We had a couple early on. Oh, Susie Q was here very early. She always comes back to say hi and then has to bug out and then tries to make it back in. If you're out there, good to see you. Glad you're here. I've got my book agent, my literary agent, texting me in the other show, or in another window, so I'll have to speak to her after the show. And we always talk late nights. I think she does other work during the evenings, or she's just a night owl. And so that's when we always talk. Between like 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is where we get most of our talking done. And so welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. I appreciate that. I'm going to give you an update on my wife, Rainey. Remember last night, we had all the storms going on here, and I actually had to bug out of here a little early, about 10 minutes early last night, because my children, my 2 daughters, Flynn is at camp, my son. My 2 daughters were getting awfully scared of the thunderstorm. We had hail here. We had thunderstorm. And apparently in the northeast part of our town, little town here of New Richmond in Wisconsin, we had a tornado touchdown. So it was pretty hefty weather last night. We survived. But then I find out after the show, within an hour of being off the show, my wife contacts me, texts me from her sister's phone because her phone was out up there, that they had a 8.2 on the Richter scale earthquake up in Alaska offshore. And there was a tsunami warning until about 2 a.m. Now, Rainey was about 250 miles, I think, away from the epicenter of all of that. But they were still predicting it, and I looked at the maps, and they showed, red lines along the coast where it was going to hit. And they were right across the bay, if you will, from the last red line, right on the fringe of it. And so I was a little concerned because we lost contact after that. And I didn't hear from her till this afternoon again. And apparently they did fine. By the time I heard from her this afternoon, she said, I'm doing great, and I've already caught 3 fish today. She caught her 3 salmon today. So, excuse me. She said she's going to be bringing home at least 30 pounds of salmon. And at the same time, she's going to be bringing home some caribou meat. What was the other thing she said? Caribou, not elk, maybe elk. I know it was caribou. Oh, moose. She's going to be bringing home moose burgers. So I said, yum, bring it. Wesley Curry says, I remember my grandfather's last words to me just before he kicked the bucket. He said to me, I wonder how far I can kick that bucket. At least he died with a sense of humor. And Field Guy says, salmon is good in omega fatty acids. Yes, it is. It's good eating, too, even though it's good for you. Hey, David Castle, good to see you in the chat room tonight. Barbie D, nice to see you as well. So welcome, everybody. Corey Blake, good to see you, brother. Glad you're here. Makes my heart warm when I see you show up. Kapla. And so, wait, that's Klingon with a Romulan salute. I can't remember what they said. You know, fist to the chest and the salute. So, anybody know what they said when they did that? Or was it just a salute? Centurion. So, there you go. So it's good to see you all. Let's start off a little bit since we're not doing matchbook courage these days. I picked up this little book about 25 years ago, 365 Dalai Lama. Now, you may like the Dalai Lama. You may not like the Dalai Lama. You might not like the politicians that he seems to enjoy. But I think he's a pretty neutral dude. But he's got his ways of doing things. And so I thought I would just flip this open. Excuse me. There we go. To 50 and 51. Let's look at those today from the Dalai Lama. And these are just his meditations, reflections on stuff. And this one is Meditations on Men and Women. How about that? I meditate about that a lot myself. Always trying to understand, always trying to do the right things. You know how that goes. So number 50. I'm sorry, I need my cheaters for this. He said, since there are no fundamental differences between men and women, it goes without saying that they have the same rights and any discrimination is unjustified. In addition, men need women just as much as women need men. Whenever their rights are trampled, women should demand their rights and men should support their struggle. I myself have fought in India for 20 years so that women can be educated, for example, and have jobs at every level of Tibetan society in an equal capacity to men. He goes on to number 51. According to Buddhism, there is not the slightest difference in the way both men and women have what we call Buddha nature. or the potential for enlightenment. They are therefore essentially equal. And I think most of us have a pretty good grasp of this nowadays. Now, what else does he say on men and women? Number 49, we'll go back a page. Men and women are, of course, physically different, and this entails a number of differences on the emotional level. But their way of thinking, their sensations, and every other aspect of their personalities are basically the same. Men are more able to do heavy work. Women seem more efficient at tasks which require clear and quick thinking. Men and women are unusually equals in areas where reflection plays a key role. So there's some thoughts on meditations on men and women. I just flipped over and I saw his meditations on the family, 60 and 61. Let's just read these and we'll be done with this for tonight. It is the family that must play the most important role. If peace truly reigns within the family, if the family imparts not only knowledge but true moral values, and is a place where one learns to live in an upright and altruistic way, then it becomes possible to build the rest of society on these foundations. For me, the family unit has an enormous responsibility. And that's very, very true. We'll do one more on the family. He says it's important that children are able to flourish within the family in the truest sense, that they develop their basic human qualities in its fold, that their behavior is noble, they have the strength of mind to help others, feel concerned about their environment, and serve as an example to others. Later on, such children will be good at their work and capable of training the next generation. Even if they become aged professors with thick spectacles, they will still retain some of the good habits they developed in their childhood. That is what I believe, he said. So there, words from the Dalai Lama. Now, I don't read words from the Dalai Lama because I am like on a Dalai Lama kick. I just happened to come across this book crammed into my shelves, which are all over this room. And I saw it and I said, I've not cracked the cover of this for 20 years. So I picked it up and looked at it and I said, I got to read some of these on the show. So I think it's a good way to get us rolling on the show and to keep things going. Where did those come from? Those were not out there. These were on the couch?
Yeah.
I think your sister must have grabbed them. Thank you. So those were out on the sofa.
They were
My
by
divining
my
rods.
bird.
By your bird.
Yeah.
Oh, well. There you go.
Blueberry is being very
Well, come here and tell everybody, since you're in here, about...
Can I go get Blueberry?
Sure, bring them in. So, Rowan asked me for a pet today. And I said, we got 2 pets. We got a cat and a dog. Well, she wanted something. Can I have a snake? I said, no, we'll discuss that when your mom gets home. We don't want to surprise your mom with a pet snake. How about a lizard? How about a toad? How about a turtle? How about this? And then she said, how about a bird? And I said, we could probably do a bird. I said, but I need you to do something for me before I do something for you. My people will see your people. Will work it out, okay? Make an arrangement. So she did a ton of work for me today. Cleaning, which shows me she knows how to do it. And so this was the payoff. Now, of course, he's not trained to do anything other than sit in his cage right now. But
Can I take him out?
No, don't take him out because you'll never get him back in.
I took him out in the bedroom upstairs.
No, let's not do that. What did I tell you and John tell you about taking him out?
Ellery kicked the gate and it went open.
Do not take the bird out of the cage yet.
I didn't mean to.
There he is. There, you can see him. There's his face.
It's Blueberry.
His name is Blueberry. He was actually, hey. When she saw him, she saw his back. Now, I don't know if you can really make it out because of the cage, but he was kind of curled over into a ball. Hi, baby. and with his head and beak tucked, and he looked like a little ball of blue sky with clouds. And she said, "Oh, that's the one I want." So he's a little parakeet, and he's been here living with us for about 6 hours now. So there you go.
And he's mine.
There you go. And he is Rowan's bird.
And only.
There you go. Bye, Ro. So that's the new addition to the family tonight.
And Addie said we should only wait 2 or 3 days, and then you let him out.
No, I don't trust Addie, a 13-year-old, over 14-year-old,
She has 4.
over everybody else I've talked to, every adult I've talked to. No. We will discuss this later.
She has 4 parakeets, though.
Don't care. All right. There you go. So that's Blueberry. The bearded dragons. We looked at bearded dragons today, David Castle. And we saw them over at the pet store. And I said, we need to get one of those. I'd like to have one of those. And as Iowa X says, did you have fried chicken for dinner? A fried parakeet. Now, fried parakeet, about the only way I think I'd eat a parakeet is if I had been going for 7 days without food on Naked and Afraid. I'd say, I have found meat. Here he is. Snap. And let's cook him. That would last a bite, maybe. A morsel. A mere appetizer. So, there you go. Now that I was interrupted by my child, there you go. So, that's the new bird. There are only 2 kinds of birds. Ryan Gale says, those you can eat and those you can't eat. Ain't that the truth? Simplistic logic like that is what we need, Ryan. So, and by the way, Ryan, welcome to the show. Glad you're here tonight. So, be firm now, Scotty, says Corey Blake. I'm always firm. My kids, I don't know where they get it. They are not shrewd negotiators. They are just negotiators. And it doesn't matter what I say. 20 minutes before the show started, they were outside and it's getting dusky. They're walking down the side of the street with the neighbor girl who's 14, not 13. And I said, hey, I want you guys in the house or up in the yard by 9 o'clock. By the time I start radio, up in the yard. Well, come on, Dad. Can't we walk around? Can we walk over there on the side? No, up in the yard. Well, can we just walk along the side of the... No, up in the yard. Well, can't we go down to the park or something? No, up in the yard. Well, can we go over to Addie's front porch? Okay, you can do that because their front porch is right off of our yard. I said, you can go between the houses. So my kids constantly, no matter what I say, no matter what edict there is, Corey Blake, this is for your benefit since you said that. No matter what I say, no matter what Rainey says there is always a negotiation that has to take place. But what if I just ... et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? No. You know what? When I say that, I have a reason for it. Now, I don't need any discussion. I don't need any excuses. I don't need to be asked 8 different ways. You just do what I say. And that's the bottom line. I do not want you on the street after dark. It's 9 o'clock. It's summer. I get that. But you're still only 9 and 6. So out in the yard or in the house. The yard right out the sliding glass door over to the neighbor's front porch. That's it. Boom, 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 boom. There you go. So yes, I am firm with my kids. I have to be. Otherwise, they will find every loophole imaginable. I told my mom about that a couple of weeks ago. We were talking. And I told her all about that stuff. We were talking. She just started laughing. She goes, ha, ha, ha. She said, I was waiting for the day when your children did that to you. Like you did it to me. So there you go. So at least they're normal, huh? So anyway, anybody else wander in while we're talking so I can say hello and that's all? If I missed you, It's not deliberate. It's because we're talking. We're doing stuff. I had a fun time on Rocky's show tonight. Did a few tarot readings. And had a good time. It's always good time. Always brings back good times when we do that. So we had a lot of fun. What are you saying, field guy? I used to stick em in the ball and ply catch. Haha. I have no idea what you just said there, you foreigner. I don't understand your language. So, yeah, Rocky, it was a lot of fun being on a show tonight with Ron Phillips, of course, too. And over on Mojo 50, and they're doing their, I want to say anomalous paranormal show. What the hell is the name of Rocky's show? Somebody save me. Anyway, you know what it is. I got it in my head somewhere. So, what about evil? What about sin? What about good and evil? What about heaven and hell? Do you think you're going to heaven? Let me ask you that. Now, maybe you're not part of a religion anymore that believes that there's a heaven or a hell. Did you at one time believe that? Are you in a denomination or religion that believes that now? Where do you think you're going to go? Who convinced you that heaven and hell were real places? I'm not saying they aren't, because I don't know. I've never been there. I do know this, and I'll wrap a little paranormal story into this. I had the man who was my mentor when I was a young kid, from the time I was Flynn's age, 11, until I was 15. And he's the one who kind of took me under his wing. He invited me to church the first time I ever met him. His name was Bill Fisher. I met him in a little cafe not far from our house where I grew up. And my brother and I had worked for a farmer in a truck garden, they called it, a big, huge corporate type of, for a small farmer, garden and planting. And we were covered in black soil from head to foot, as dirty can be. And he paid us, get this is 1972, folks. He paid us $5 for working for him all day, planting tomatoes. And $5. You know, in the 1920s, it would have been 2 bits, 25 cents. $5. In 1972, $5 was the equivalent today of about $32. So that's what he paid us. And so we went to the little cafe. It was Lloydie's Cafe. It was on Lyndale Avenue and on the other side of Lyndale Avenue. And it was a busy street, but it wasn't a highway or anything. It's a busy street. On the other side was the Mississippi River. So we grew up a block off the Mississippi River in Minneapolis. And so I'm sitting at the counter, Lloydie's Cafe, your typical, very cool when you think about it, but probably just a greasy spoon back then, with the little round stools and the Formica countertop with the silver chrome edges on it. And so I went in there to get us burgers, my brother and I, with our $5 each. And I think it probably only cost us a couple of bucks total for 2 burgers and fries. And so I'm sitting there, and there was an older guy who was, now that I think about it, he was 60 years old. And he was, when I was 11, that was an old guy. You all know how old I am. I'm 60. I'm now the age he was when he met me. And he was the fireplace builder. He's the guy that introduced me, to church. I became a born-again Christian the next morning, Sunday, because he invited me to church and came and picked me up he had a bus route for one of the big churches in Minneapolis. And and he, I went to church, And I'm going to see, I've got a picture of Bill here. I'm going to show you. This is the guy right here. Now, this is the man who, at the time, my mom was looking for a big brother from the Big Brothers organization for me and one for my brother because we didn't have a dad in the home. And I had gone out a couple of times with this big brother, and eventually Bill became the person that filled those shoes. He said to my mom, he sat and negotiated with her. He had a little coffee and said, I want to talk to you about something. You're getting a big brother for Scotty. He says, I would love to take him under my wing. And so he taught me how to build fireplaces. He was a stonemason, a fireplace builder, bricklayer. And so I would go to work with him on Saturdays. He would pick me up on the weekends. And I'd go stay out with he and his wife out in their place north of the cities in the country. And he'd bring me to church on Sunday mornings. We'd go to church together. We took trips together. I remember we went up to the North Shore, Duluth, up on Lake Superior, and we saw all that stuff. We spent a lot of time together. Bill and Scotty were seen as inseparable when I was a kid in our church circles. And then as I started to get a little older into my teens, I drifted more into the teen friends and stuff. I remember thinking back how offended he was or hurt, almost like he had hurt feelings when I said, I'm not going to sit with you in church today. I'm going to go sit with my buddies from the youth group. Okay. Now, he didn't make a big scene out of it. As I think back in my memory, I think it kind of hurt his feelings a little bit. And I didn't mean to do that. But Bill Fisher was an amazing man. And there's a story about him I want to tell you. And now he died of prostate cancer when I was 15. I remember he went into a little nursing home facility, probably wasn't nursing. What do they call that when they know you're going to die and they put you in a home that's going to help you because his older wife couldn't take care of him the right way. And so here he is. I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's share it. Boom, boom, and boom. Now, this is an old picture. This picture was taken in 1973. And so he would have been 61 years old in this picture. And we went to, remember Kmart? We stopped at the Kmart, and for $10, you could get your portraits taken. So he paid $10 total. And so one taken of him, and they took one of me. He kept the one of me. I had the one of him. And I found this photo in the bottom of a box of all my old artwork. Now, he died in 1976. Is that right? 2 and 4? Yep. 1976. And I found this picture 10 years ago, maybe in a box full of my old artwork. And you can see by his face the kind of man he was. Now, he was very dedicated to his faith. He was a man of faith. And he loved me with all his heart and took me under his wing. And then he passed away. So I'm going to get back. Oops, that's a job I'm working on. Hold on. Let me get back here. And we're going to unshare the screen. There we go. So Bill Fisher. Now, he was a man that was a born-again Christian. He brought me into that faith. I was taught about heaven and hell, about my sin nature, about my need for Jesus, and all of this in the church. And I became a Christian, and it was because of him I ended up in the Christian high school, and it was because of him I went on to Christian college, and I went on to seminary. And now, remember, he died in 1975. That would be 55 years ago. No, 45 years ago. 46 years ago, to be exact. And a few years ago, there was because of the work I was doing, I had a lot of contact with people in the paranormal realm, psychics, and so on. And so I had a psychic get a hold of me and say, I'd love to do a reading for you. And she did a reading for me, and she connected with Bill. But I want to move on from that one because the more important one was, Michael and Marty Perry. You may have seen them on the Ghost Adventures show several times. He's a British psychic. His wife is American, but she's the artist who will sit and draw pictures with a dead phones on, so she doesn't necessarily hear what he's saying, but she draws pictures. And so they did a reading for me at Waverly Hills once. We were all speaking. I spoke at Waverly Hills, read tarot, and they were speaking there, and we were all at a Darkness Radio event with Dave Schrader back in 2000, I want to say 2008 or 2009. And so they invited me up to their room, and they said, come on in, let's do a reading in their outer suite. And so Michael would start to pick up things. He said, don't tell me anything. Let me just see what I pick up. You can go look them up. Michael and Marty, M-A-R-T-I, Perry, P-A, I want to say it's P-A-R-R-I, P-A-R-I. And dead phones. There you go, Corey Blake. And how appropriate, eh? And so he starts picking up. He picked up on my aunt and described her. And the way he sees them, he was communicating with them. And I remember seeing him saying, hold on. He says, hold on, darling. He says, I see you. I see you. Shh, I'm telling a story. Yes? Are you being distracting just to be distracting?
Dad.
You can be here, but you got to be quiet. I'm telling a story. So he said, I see you, darling. I see you. Love, he called it, British. I see you, love. I see you, love. And he says, I see somebody, and he says she is giving her name. She says, it's Sandy. Sandy? And Marty happened to have her headset off for the moment. She's drawing pictures, and she said, no. She's saying, it's Andy, not Sandy. It's Andy. Now, Andy was my aunt who had passed away, and I told you that story about the voices I picked up with my daughter, Bryn, after she had passed away very early. And so it's Andy. Oh, and she said, wait, I got somebody. And he said, oh, Michael said, oh, she just walked away. She said she has somebody that wants to talk to you. And so he said, oh, she's back. I go, wow, that was quick. He said, time's different over there. And so she has a man that she called William. And Michael's picking up on this, a William. And I said, I'm not sure who William is. And she said he is holding up a set of keys, like to a truck, and he's shaking them, saying, this should shake your memory as to who I am. Now, let me backtrack. Bill Fisher I never knew him as William. I never even thought of him. You said William, I never thought of his name. That's why she said William, and I had no idea who she was talking about. But Bill had an old truck, an old Dodge pickup truck from the early 70s. And he put a self-built wooden topper on the back, and he painted Bible verses all over it. John 3:16. Will you go and take the dog out with you, please? Everybody's being very disruptive. I'm not sure why. Can you keep that quiet, please? You're saying that for effect. I want you to not be in here right now. Thank you. My daughter got pooped on by the bird. Well, there it is. All right. Now you all know. That's the rest of the story. So, Michael is saying that she brought a man named William Keys. Well, Bill Fisher was very well known around our church and, of course, in the neighborhoods that we drove around, because he had this truck with a wooden camper on the top that he painted Bible verses all over. John 3:16, John 1:6, all these other verses. And so he's shaking the keys, and Michael said, he said you'd recognize him from this, shaking keys. And I noticed that Marty was drawing, she wrote out the verse John 3:16, she writes. And Michael said, it's a truck that he wants you. I said, I know exactly who that is. And I said, why would you be connecting with Bill Fisher? Because his belief And mind you, 12 years ago when this was going on, my beliefs, 13 years ago, my belief system was still on the edge of things. And I said, he's supposed to be in heaven. Why wouldn't Bill Fisher be in heaven? I asked him. And the answer came back through Bill Fisher and he said this. He says, it's totally different over here than I thought it was. Or than I was led to believe is the idea. And then the last scene Michael saw was him sitting in a pickup truck with his elbow hanging out the window and waving, "See ya." And he drove off. And so it's very interesting. This is a man that was very influential in my young life, taught me certain things about the afterlife, very immersed in Christian theology, Baptist fundamentalist conservative theology. And he says, it's not what I thought it was over here. It's different. And so the first thing that came to my mind when that happened was what? What do you think? Did I immediately doubt the faith or the things I'd been taught? No. What came to my mind right away is, this isn't real. This isn't him. It's a lie of, guess who? The Satan, the lie of the devil, trying to take my eyes off of God and the truth of God. That's what I thought at the time. Then it was interesting that I had somebody else, this other psychic I told you about later, came up with Bill Fisher as well. Didn't even know who he was. Neither did Michael or Marty. And she said, he says it's not like you thought it was going to be over here. And he wants you to know that, and he's proud of what you're doing. So what do you make of that? When we talk about the afterlife, when we talk about heaven and hell, we talk about sin and evil and all of those things. Christo-paganism is this syncretic faith. When you blend these two, it seeks to blend elements of the two different, paganism and Christianity. Can that actually be done? Or do you need to be locked into one or the other? One of the outdated notions from ancient Christianity that should be jettisoned is the idea of God, that Satan's a god of evil. So was Satan there trying to dissuade me from believing the truth? No one of us can overcome evil in its entirety. But every action that we take helps or hurts its growth. This is what we ended on last night. The idea of original sin, that we are born original sinners, fits quite neatly into this idea of evil and the devil. Instead of the traditional Christian understanding that we're born awful and degenerate, that's the original sin, as seen by Augustine, and was transmitted by the Sex Act, transmitted the original sin nature, making sex dirty as well, by the way. Christo-pagans can see that we're all born into a world with a deficit, and that we often participate in that deficit without being consciously or cognitively aware that we're even doing it. I might know that stealing is wrong, and I don't do it. Sin or not sin. However, I'm generally unaware of the ways that corporations use terrible labor conditions around the world to make my car tires, or my toilet paper, or my clothes, or the buttons on my shirt, or whatever it might be. Meaning I participate in the corporate evil without even knowing it, adding to the deficit of the world every day, whether or not I know it. Thus, the idea of original sin in Christo-paganism could be seen as an acknowledgement that we're born into systems which aren't perfect, and that we participate in them in ways we don't even realize. Much of the modern talk about privilege, white privilege, and privilege falls into this category. If I'm white, I never experienced the pervasive racism that exists throughout every American institution, I am told. And I benefit from my skin color, even if I personally never act in racist ways. That could be, according to paganism, original sin at work. So to summarize, sin is any action that detracts from the growth in love of God, love of self, love of neighbor. While evil, get this folks, evil is the collective deficit caused by individual sin over time. So original sin is just the name given to the fact that we're born into cultures that are not perfect. And thus we participate in corporate evil all the time, even when we don't even choose to do so consciously. So evil manifests as actions and as cultural preferences and warped understandings that emphasize shame and fear over love and grace. Now, you guys know me. I'm not one of those guys that's dripping with love and all of this stuff. But I am a guy who wants to look at myself and say, I'm doing whatever I can do to spread love and grace, to be graceful, to not be judgmental. I'm harsh with my kids, but I hope you all know the difference. Harsh with my kids is teaching them something. So good is seen as a growth in love, growth in neighbor, a growth in self. And in Christo-Paganism, it's believed that God works always to lure individuals to himself, toward good, away himself or herself, away from evil, lure them away from evil. Salvation is both individual and it's corporate, happening individually for the person who has a close connection to the holy, which enables a life full of love and grace. It occurs corporately as the ongoing process by which societies really look to seek an end to the fear and shame paradigm, and work together to promote good. Salvation is always an ongoing process, enabled by a loving God who works to empower the best possible outcome in any given situation. And as I said before, this schema is a very incomplete sketch of how Christo-Pagans can understand good and evil, sin and forgiveness, and so on. And these issues are complex, but a careful working through the issues can give each person, whether you're Christian or pagan or combining the two, a way to view the world and a sense of how to create deep and meaningful change for ourselves and others through God's grace, or the goddess's grace, if you will. And that kind of brings us to the topic for tonight, now that it's 9:44 p.m., on heaven and hell and the afterlife. This is why I brought up the story of Bill Fisher. Where was he in the afterlife? Heaven, hell, the afterlife. So the interesting thing about this topic, heaven, hell, and afterlife, is that every single bit of it is purely speculative. While near-death experiences have received this great deal of media attention, the simple truth is nobody, I mean nobody, none of you actively here in the chat room, anybody who's involved in researching this stuff or studying it or incorporating it, nobody can prove what happens after death. We have ideas. We think we've made connections. We have these ideas of what that, but we don't know. As my friend John Ward used to say all the time, we don't know. We weren't there. We don't know, he says. So early peoples believed in some sort of afterlife, but the details ranged from the shadowy realm, crossing the river Styx, Sheol in Judaism, the elaborate afterlife of the Egyptians and the Chinese. In Jesus' day, there was a great deal of adoption from Zoroastrianism regarding the conflict between good and evil and the afterlife, with early Christians' beliefs that were ranging from reincarnation to bodily ascension to heaven to nothing much at all. And so even today, there are large, vast differences between Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestants on this topic, with further subdivisions among Protestants, almost denomination to denomination. And so the main understanding of Christianity is that if you're a Christian when you die, where do you go? You go to heaven. And if you're not when you die, you go to hell. I almost said that. There's an old movie, The Scarlet Pimpernel. You remember that? With Leslie Howard in the old late 30s. I think was when that movie came out, black and white. He was kind of one of the original characters, like a Zorro, like any superheroes nowadays. He was during the French Revolution. He was an Englishman fighting to save the lives of aristocrats being sent to the guillotine for no reason. And he had this, he was like Zorro, he, a swordsman and a swashbuckler and all of this, but during the day, he was a fop. Oh, an English fop with the ruffs and the so on, and a man isn't a good man unless he knows how to tie a good cravat, he said. But it just reminded me when I was talking about heaven and hell, there was a poem in The Scarlet Pimpernel. It's in the book. It was in the movie. And he said, "They seek him here. They seek him there. Those Frenchies seek him everywhere. Is he in heaven? Or is he in... Oh, that damned elusive Pimpernel." Now, I have a weird mind. That's what came to my mind when I said, do you end up in... it's between good and evil and heaven and hell, if you're not a Christian. So that was all an aside. Nothing to that. It was just fun to talk about. But heaven is a wonderful place where you commune with God. And hell is supposed to be this place of eternal torment for the damned, ruled by Satan, who will one day have to join in the suffering for all eternity. And having said that, this amalgamated understanding of the Christian afterlife does very little justice to the complexity of belief on the subject. Catholics believe in additional realms for the purification of the soul, limbo, purgatory, things like that, which none of those are biblical concepts. It's a Catholic concept. Mormons believe that the souls may be baptized and get into heaven after death. Most mainline Protestants hold that as long as you're a good person, you'll go to heaven. Hey, are you going to heaven? Well, I sure hope so. I'm a pretty good guy. Whereas in Baptist theology, there was nothing good you could do to earn God's love. Biblical theology is nothing you could do to earn God's favor, to earn salvation. And we used to say, if you can earn salvation, why did it take the Son of God coming in the form of man to die to give us salvation if we can earn it ourselves? It's a big question we used to ask. So if you're good enough, you go to heaven, and each and every denomination has a nuanced and varied view on this topic, with the amount of detail given based generally on how much that branch of Christianity believes that salvation is going to heaven. That's what it's all about. Is that what salvation is? Going to heaven? As opposed to being about a better life on earth. So a given clergy, and have you noticed that sometimes Christians who believe they're going to heaven are sometimes people that you would say if your works and what you could do to earn it counted, you wouldn't make it. Thank God you got Jesus doing it for you. So a given clergy person or a denomination might give more or less attention to the matter in their churches. Historically, arguments about the afterlife were central to many of the schisms and splits of the church. Why do they have all these divisions? Arguments about the afterlife. And while today these differences might remain, they've taken a distant backseat to this life arguments over gender, procreation, sexuality, and so on. Now, the traditional pagan understanding of the afterlife is, though most non-reconstructionist faiths lean toward some kind of reincarnation, how often the soul incarnates. And the reasons for incarnating do vary to a great degree. But pagans are much more focused on life in this world than the next. The exception to this present world focus is when pagans contact and work with what they believe to be their dead ancestors or spirit guides, which is, by the way, a lot of what the Mormons do. Ancestors and dead guides. Spirit guides, I'm sorry. Dead ancestors and spirit guides. And since there's no one singular understanding, beliefs on this subject are all over the map. And it's not considered a central doctrine to paganism of the faith, although each tradition may focus on it more or less. And the arguments against blending the Christian and pagan understandings of this is that many Christians believe that reincarnation is incompatible with Christianity. There's no such thing as reincarnation. And many pagans believe that heaven and hell are incompatible with paganism. So the breadth and the diversity of opinion on the topic is generally not addressed in either Christian or pagan discussions on the topic. But that's caused in part by the fact that there are so many beliefs, and because for most believers of both faiths, it's not a core focus in the West. And social issues have taken on a greater presence. And so some early Christians believed in reincarnation. Early Christians believed in reincarnation. Some pagans believe in a paradise realm, a heaven realm, a Valhalla. The fact that the afterlife is neither critical for salvation nor a primary focus of the modern world, where we can expect to live into our 70s in America on an average. Wow, that means I got like 10, 15 years left and I'm done. I plan to live to 104, so there you go. This implies that this is an area in which there's room for disagreement. And the working paradigm that salvation is from fear and shame to a relationship with God doesn't discuss the particulars of life after death. And frankly, I don't really have a clue as to what's there. I know what I was taught, but I don't know what's really there. I rely on some of my experiences. Bill, my aunt, other people. I've had more than Bill. There was another contact that was made with me through a psychic medium that said the same thing. It's not like this. It's not like what we thought it would be over here. What does that mean? I do believe that God is infinite love, and that as such, whatever part of me is unique and me will still exist in some form or fashion, even if it's just as a memories my loved ones, including God, hold. So angels and demons, to me, fall into the category of mystery, right along with the life after death issue. Many, many people have had visions of heaven and hell, of angels and saints. Many people fall from all walks of life, and they've all had experiences that a purely skeptical perspective can't explain, except as hallucinator or make-believer, faker, irrational idiot. So rather than try to prove or disprove the claims, I suggest this, that you look at them from the same kind of perspective I discuss when I talk about divination. Divination, which we mentioned the other day, this becoming more like the divine. Be aware that there are many charlatans out there who are going to use anything at all to get your money in their pocket. Psychics will do the same thing. That's why people are like, you do tarot readings, you charge money? You must be a charlatan and a fake. You're just doing it for the money. Well, sometimes I do a reading for the money. It doesn't mean the message is false or fake. And rather than try to prove or disprove the claims, I suggest looking at them from the same kind of perspective. As you look at divination, as you look at psychics, as you look at messages from God and so on. If you've never experienced those things, you're neither bad nor lacking in faith. And shaming people because they do or don't perceive things differently isn't going to help anyone grow in love. And having said that, if working with angels and saints and dreams or visions makes you a more loving and compassionate person, then I say, hell, go for it. Do it. And to kind of wrap this whole thing up on heaven and hell, I personally treat questions about the afterlife and non-material entities with a great deal of hesitation when trying to prove that they exist. I tell you lots of stories. I told you one about Bill Fisher tonight, about my aunt. By the way, that same setting with Michael and Marty Perry, she brought up my grandfather, her father. You know what was interesting about that? Let me sidetrack on this for just a second. Before she brought Bill over to talk to Michael, my aunt went and got my grandfather. Now, she didn't say this is who she's getting. Michael just said, hey, there's somebody else with her that she's brought forward. And she said he's kind of a shorter man. He's got a lot of shocking white hair on his head. He's very tanned. He says leather skinny looking, not horrible. He's just trying to describe. He's a man who's been in the sun a lot. And he said he's doing this. He's going, I was the money. I was the money. And there were a couple of other things said. But I said, I know exactly who that is. That's my grandpa, Oscar Gould. Oscar J. Gould. Everybody knew him as OJ. Before OJ was OJ Simpson thing. Ruined it for everybody. But he came forward. He said, I was the money. You know what that meant? He was acknowledging that, we were poor. My mom worked as a waitress, single mom, 3 kids at home. But we had a house. We had a house on a corner in a nice neighborhood. You know why? I was the money. My grandfather. It's the only reason we made it. It's the only reason my aunt made it. And he was acknowledging that for me to recognize who he was. And why that was important to him in the afterlife, I don't know. But so much of the things that were presented to me that day rang so true about the people. They're one of two things. It's either them, and it's different than what they expected, or it's all a lie of Satan. It's a trick of the devil to draw me away from focus on God. I don't think it does. I think it makes me focus more on God. But I try to keep focus on what I claim is my experience with more certainty. In the case of life after death, the Bible is very clear that God loves all and is bigger than death. And far more, and for me, that's enough. For a person desiring more about this, you got to dig deeper. You got to think deeper. You know, I'm reminded of this song there was a Christian rock group back in the 80s. They were called Petra, which is Greek for rock. And of course, in our youth group, very fundamental conservative Baptist, can't listen to that music. That's devil's music dressed in Christian clothing. And the song was Grave Robber. And it starts out, it says, there's a place there's a place we must all go alone. An appointment we have with the great unknown. Like a vapor, this life is just waiting to pass. Like the flowers that bloom, like the withering grass. And life seems so short, and death so complete, and the grave an impossible portion to cheat. But there's one who has been there and still lives to tell. There is one who has been through both heaven and hell, and the grave will come up empty-handed that day. Jesus will come and take us away. And the chorus said, where is the sting? Tell me, where is the bite? When the grave robber comes like a thief in the night. Where is the victory? Where is the prize? When the grave robber comes and death finally dies. Now that's from a very Christian perspective. But this is what I thought of when I said God loves all, he's bigger than all, and he's bigger than death. And I only use he because it's an easy way to talk about it. The divine is bigger than death. So what lies beyond? We don't know. None of us knows. Now, the Bible said, we used to hail to a verse that said, these things are written that you might know what is the truth. But that's from within the faith that was said. There was a time I thought I knew. And I think back to that title of that old Star Trek episode from the original episode. The world is hollow, for I have touched the sky. And I used to describe my Christianity that way. I said, it's like we're in a world that's like in an eggshell. And we see that sky, the inner side of the egg. But when we can get up there and we find that it's fragile and we can crack through it, and we stick our head out and see there's a much bigger universe here than I thought. And damn it, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. I would love to have God show me differently if I'm wrong and have been deceived somehow. But so far, no matter what we're taught, no matter the theology we were raised in or have chosen, no matter what we believe now, none of us has been there and none of us knows what's out there. We were told we were given Jesus, who conquered death, rose again, offers life. That's 2,000 years ago. Do we know that even really happened? This is what happens with that. There has to be an active, cognitive, participating thing going on to keep humanity in touch with what's real. And so far, we don't have that. We have belief and faith. Field Guy says Einstein's theory of relativity was proven right with the photo of a black hole in space. There you go. There it is. Are there photos of heaven? Are there photos of hell? No. And I'm not just being flippant with that. Steve Clark said, I remember when TV used to sign off with a pilot reaching out and touching the face of God while flying his jet. Reminds me of Reagan's speech, President Reagan, the Challenger disaster, when he gave his eulogy on public television. And he said, for they have slipped the surly bonds of earth and touched the face of God. Very poetic, but what's really there? I'm not a naysayer. I'm not an atheist. I'm an agnostic because I just don't know the answers. But we'll keep exploring them here. And in 23 hours, we'll be back to do that again. And tomorrow we're going to talk about astrology and divination and how that fits into Christo-Paganism. So you all have a good night. And we'll be back tomorrow. And as always, live long and prosper.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.